Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 5, episode 25. We're getting up there, and still plenty of episodes left this season. My name is Adil and I have Misophonia. Today, I talked to Leanne. Leanne put her money where her mouth is and actually bought a large 6-acre property out in rural North Carolina, where she could be away from her misophonia triggers. We talk about all her challenges that finally led her to make that decision and buy some isolation. We talk a lot about the challenges that she's had to face in her workplace as a nurse. She's actually had to she's had to deal with a surprising amount of pushback, mockery, and gaslighting for her misophonia, sometimes from the most unlikely places. But through it all, as you'll hear, Leanne has always taken the high ground, where I know many of us would probably have blown a fuse much earlier. So I think it's important to hear how she thinks about the awareness and acceptance void that we face in the world. You can shoot me an email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. And we're on Twitter at Misophonia Show. You can also just message inside the Misophonia Podcast app. Once again, as always, thank you Patreon supporters. If you want to contribute, you can check out the website at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast to find out more information and about the swag that I'm giving away. And also, remember, the cheapest, easiest way to reach more people is to leave a quick review or rating or share the podcast on your social media. All right, now, here's my conversation with Leanne. Welcome, Leanne, to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Well, thank you. I am excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Of course, no, my pleasure. Why don't you tell people kind of roughly where you are and what you do?
Well, I just moved to 6.5 acres here in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, which is near Charlotte. I bought land, obviously, so I could have some peace and serenity and distance from triggers. And
Mm-hmm.
I am an RN. I work with patients who have cancer, and we give them their radiation treatment.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, let's maybe talk about the move. How recent was this move?
I closed beginning of August and I moved in beginning of September, so I'm still in boxes. Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us kind of what was happening before. What prompted this?
The past 20 years, I've kind of lived in suburbia. I did live in
Mm-hmm.
Florida in a development, and it was fine because it was, and I'm not trying to be cliche, but it was older people, tended to be older people. And you weren't allowed to have a basketball hoop out in the driveway. There were rules.
Yeah.
So it was fine. The triggers were very low, not a lot of dogs barking. Then I moved to the Charlotte area, and my daughter didn't want to live out in the woods by herself. So I decided I would live in suburbia, and it was horrible. It was in a cul-de-sac, and there
Oh
were
yeah.
dogs barking and balls bouncing and music blaring and um, just a lot of triggers. And so the minute she graduated from high school, I sold and I rented for a year out in the country until I found a place. And then I finally found this place. And I'm not free of triggers, trust me. People have dogs, but
Mm-hmm.
it is way less than it was, where I was living in suburbia. So,
Yeah. No, understood. Yeah, suburbia. I mean, it's not urban downtown, but it's almost some ways worse because you don't have the constant white noise. You have a lot of sudden triggers.
correct.
Um,
Yeah.
and okay, and interesting. So then, okay, so Florida wasn't too bad. No,
Wasn't
that's
too
great.
bad.
I think a lot of us kind of dream about getting to the point where we can kind of get a whole bunch of acres away from everybody. Um,
Yeah. And it's not
how's it?
enough. Trust me. 6.5 is
Yeah,
not enough.
right. So what's
But
around you there?
Well, I live at the end of a dead end road, and truthfully, I am covered on two sides by state park property, so no one can ever build.
Mm,
So I do have one neighbor who I don't know how far she away she is. I'm bad with distances, but she's up on the hill. So when her dog, big old dog, barks, it is like boom, 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 barking.
mm,
But the good thing is she doesn't let him sit outside and bark for a long period of time. So, we live in the woods and the mountains, and so you kind of need a dog to alert, for any activity. But
mm.
again, it's not 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour of a dog barking,
Right,
thank God.
right,
So, I just have to talk myself off the ledge and realize dogs are going to bark. And until I can find 50 acres, this is what the best I could do for now.
right. Or until we start our own Misophonia community, which
Well,
has
yes.
many acres between us. Um,
Yeah.
and so obviously it's been an issue for a while. When did you actually find out? You said you were figuring this out. When did you find out this had a name and this was a real thing?
I did not find out this was a thing and had a name until I moved here to Charlotte, and I was listening to the Bob and Sherry show. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they're actually out of Florida, but they are syndicated, and it's a morning show. And I think it was them. I don't know. Might have been the afternoon show, but whatever. And they said, hey, there's this sound sensitivity thing where if people are chewing loudly or popping gum and it has a name. So this was probably, oh, 15, 16, 17 years ago, maybe. But I've been dealing with it since I was around 10 and I'm 55. So finally found out that it has a name, that I'm not just insane, as we all feel like we're crazy
Right.
until we
Yeah.
know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Um, and well, yeah, maybe let's rewind all the way back. And how long? When you start noticing it?
I was around 10. I shared a wall with my two brothers
Mm,
and bedroom wall, and they would, of course, be talking and goofing around as boys do. And I would scream and yell at them to stop
mm,
talking. Of course, they would laugh and talk louder, and that's my first memory of it. And I don't know why or how it all began, but that's my first memory of, and to this day, they're like, well, remember when we were growing up and you'd always be yelling at us? And I'm like, well, yeah, but now they understand that it's got a name and it's got an actual
mm.
pathology behind it. I wasn't just controlling or crazy.
Right. So it's interesting because it probably didn't start as soon as you had those rooms kind of assigned. I'm always curious, kind of like when does it switch? When does it go from you
Right,
have the room next door? There's
right,
it didn't suddenly start making it didn't suddenly start talking to each other loudly.
right.
Um, was but it's time when there's hormones happening, like there's things are like your kids are kind of changing. Yeah, there's just let's talk about like something about that age when something maybe clicks or trips. Just always think, yeah, interesting to think about what could have caused that. Was there anything else happening around that time, like any stresses around home or in your life
Well,
that you remember?
um, you know, uh, back in the 70s, parents raised their children a little differently, and uh, not throwing my parents or my mom under the bus, but that you were spanked and you were hit and you were just, so
Hmm.
that's the only thing that I can say that may have been a little abusive about my childhood. There was like no alcoholism, there was no um anything else, just
Hmm.
a little bit of chaos. I didn't really understand why I would do things wrong.
Mm.
But I do remember when I was little, my parents had that bedroom until we put an addition on, and then they moved, and the boys lived in there. And I remember listening to my parents, like Sunday morning, I'd wake up and I'd hear them talking, and it didn't bother me, 5 or 6 years old, I'm talking. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what happened at that age, 9, 10, or 11, where all of a sudden, you know, like you said, the switch was tripped. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, kind of hear what you said about all these. Yeah, things. Some things were changing. And there was it just could have been some weird. Well, not weird, but a combination of things that could have converged around that time when you start to become sensitive. How did your family members, I guess, start to um I guess react to your reactions?
Well, the boys, like I said, made fun of me.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that I remember is my mom used to love those hard cinnamon candies,
Mm,
and she used to love to chew gum, and she would pop and snap. And then I noticed that that really bothered me. I couldn't be around her when she was sucking on those hard cinnamon
it's
candies,
very
or
70s.
yeah, right. Or I remember one time we were in the car and she was chewing away on the gum, and I was just beside myself, and I was probably about 12, 13, and how how do you even put it into words? You don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know you're sitting there wanting to literally kill yourself, and I'm like, can you just please stop? And of course she started laughing, because of course
Oh,
it you
it
don't know what
sounds
to do.
ridiculous. Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous, and she could see how uncomfortable I was. I think I even started crying, and that kind of made her giggle more. Of course, it was just an unfortunate. She wasn't trying to be cruel. It just happened, and so then after that, then you try to do everything you can to be, as invisible as possible, right?
Hmm.
You know, and
Just
not
bottle it up and not
right.
not turn it into an external scene. Just kind of keep it
Ex
internal.
exactly. Yes. And then I started work when I was a little bit older, 18. I started working I grew up on Lake Erie, and there's a beach bar. So I would work at the beach bar, and I wouldn't get home till 4:30 in the morning. This was during the summers when I was in college. And of all things, the robin, and again, this sounds insane, the robin starts chirping around that time. So just as
Yeah.
I'm trying to go to sleep, here's this bird literally sitting outside my window. And so then got in a feud for, years with the stupid bird. And it's no other bird. You know, I cannot stand the robin, and I cannot stand the noise it makes. It's just this incessant, and it comes to the same tree, it seems, every freaking spring. And I would hang metal pie plates out there. I mean, it's ridiculous,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Again, you feel like you're
Interesting.
crazy because it doesn't have a name. It doesn't have what is happening? What does this mean? What is wrong with me? And
You're right. Yeah. If someone saw you doing that and started asking you, and you're like, "Oh, I'm just trying to keep a robin, using all this apparatus to keep a robin away from my window," they would think you're
right,
crazy.
right. And then I didn't realize a fan or a white noise machine, back then, that it would
Mm,
have helped. You just lie there seething and throwing shoes out the window. I mean, just the ridiculous things that you do.
right.
Get some relief.
How did it? Interesting. So, were friends and kind of in your social environment, or even at that bar, were you being triggered by kind of outside of family and wildlife around your house?
Yeah. Um, Friends, it didn't really seem to manifest too much in college in the dorms, which is absolutely remarkable. But a couple of times, if they were out there and they were real loud and I was trying to sleep, um,
Hmm.
you know, I acted, inappropriately and they apologize. But again, you don't know what it is and you don't know what's going on. So you just put the earplugs in, you put the pillow over your head. Like I still sleep with a pillow over my head. I
Oh,
just
really?
do
Like, okay, yeah, this is by habit. Yeah,
just
it's
by
kind of
habit because
yeah,
now it feels weird without it there. Um, so you and again, you don't want to appear crazy. So you just suffer in silence, basically.
right.
Um, and then, you
Did
know,
you tell your friends? Like,
I I
try to
didn't
explain it to them?
know. I didn't know what to
Yeah,
explain except would you
yeah,
stop? It's 11:30 at night, and can you stop running around the house screaming your heads off, please? I'm trying to
right,
sleep. Just stop,
right.
you
Yeah,
know? I didn't know what it was, what was going on, or
but
you
college
know,
was
no.
generally okay. And you were able to get out. What happened when you kind of like went out on your own?
Um, well, of course, that Robin, in the springtime would
Right.
always show up, and I did end up buying. Well, I rented for quite a few years after I
Hmm.
graduated from college, and I moved back home, and I rented various places, and of course, there were dogs everywhere you go.
Hmm.
So then
Hmm.
I decided, then this was up near Buffalo, New York, to buy a place with some land. So I did. I bought about 3 acres at the end of a dead end street, and so then I lived there, and thank God there were not any barking dogs. Um, so then, it's more manageable because there's no dogs. And at this point, my family knew, that I was probably going to eat in a different room if things got too much, or to be quiet if I was going to sleep. And then um, moved to
Well, at
Florida.
least they good. They went at least went they went from giggling to letting you, leave the room
Yeah, it
and
took
be
it took a
quiet. Yeah.
while, but you
And
know,
this was all before you knew it had a name. This was just
yes,
kind
this
of
was
like
all
years
before I
of
knew it had a name. Yeah, like
yeah.
mom would get wind chimes, and I'd say, Mom, can you please just put them far away from the house? Just put them because we had her house too. There was land there, and I said, just put them far away. Like just enjoy them way in the backyard. Get them away from me,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
she would, and so yeah. Then I moved to Florida, and there was I lived with my parents for a little while until I found a place to move to in Florida. And there was one night when my sister came to visit and they were up talking, and I had to go to work the next day. I'm a nurse. I had to be to work early, 6 o'clock and then 6:30. And they were up late, having fun. And I said, I just said, can you guys just please, keep it down just a little bit. And, you know, there was an issue,
Mm.
but we talked it over and then everything was fine. And this was again before we figured out it had a name and an actual, you know, somewhat of a reason for it. So it was still just a lot of that. And then um my mother, unfortunately, when she ate, she would drag her teeth on the tines of her fork, and that's about enough to put me into
Mm.
orbit. So then
Yes.
you do a then you do a lot of throat clearing, when you see the fork heading towards her, where I
Is
try to drown it out.
okay, you're right. I was gonna wonder if you're trying to get her attention or try to do some kind of a drown out
No, I'm
situation.
just
Yeah.
trying to drown the situation out,
Yeah.
And what I have noticed, though, even to this day, I eat my food in about 30 seconds just so I
Oh
can get
yeah.
up and leave the table. And I never really put the two together as to why do I wolf down my food? I mean, there was always plenty of food, but it's so I can eat and leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have there's there's a tension when we sit down and eat. It's like compared to when we're just completely by ourselves. It's like night and day. And so um I think that adrenaline just kind of makes us eat fast and get up and um if we're nice, offer to do dishes, make it seem like we're getting up early to do something
Right,
useful, but
exactly.
whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. You're exactly right. Whatever it takes. Oh my gosh. So,
So So then when you said, there were incidents and whatnot, I mean, it must have been agonizing. Like I mean, for all of us, it is. It's like, it's draining you don't want to make a scene ever. And so the times when we do decide we have to say something, that decision's not taken lightly. And then when there's an incident, I mean, it just makes it more difficult to want to explain it again the next time. At
yes,
least,
it,
it's
yes,
gotta be.
it is. It is never an easy conversation. It certainly got easier once I found out that it's actually a real thing. And I said, oh my God, I've you know, all these years, how many, um, 30 years that I just think that I'm a crazy person. And it actually has a name. And then especially with my family, things got gentler, you know,
Mm,
more understanding and, you know, but then again, you don't want to be a person that everyone's got to cater to, that everyone's got to walk on eggshells around you. You don't want that either. So there's still always
yeah,
this balance, right? Of trying to not feel like you want to drive your car into a cement wall and have your mother in the car and let her chew gum because every person should be able to chew gum if they want to chew gum. But eventually she just got to where she didn't bother chewing gum around me because it's just not worth it, you know. She was
right.
gracious about it. And but again, you know, you just feel like, oh my God, my family, you know, has to walk on tippy toes around me because I've got this crazy thing in my brain and it's ridiculous. They're just noises.
Right, right. Um, yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, there's just this kind of like a heightened self-awareness that we have
Right.
that where it's like whether we're sensitive to the noises or oversensitive to like how we might make other people feel, which is not a bad thing.
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
it's kind of a no-win situation.
It is.
Um,
It really is. And then of course you know, isolate because it's just easier.
hmm Yeah, you get a progressively bigger acreage in North Carolina, and
Yes. Yeah.
um, and so how did you find out? Did you mention exactly where you read it? Was it like an article? Was it on
It
TV?
was on
Oh, right, the talk
the
show. Yeah.
radio. It was on a talk show
Okay.
of all things. Yes.
Of course, of course.
Yes.
Um, and then so you told your family.
Mhm.
What about friends? Did you start to then open up to strangers? Start handing out
I
pamphlets on
started
sidewalks?
opening up to friends. Like I have one friend who I don't know what it is, but when I'm on the phone with her, she has to eat, and I'm like, listen, I can't do this. I said, it's not you, it's me, but I'm gonna hang up right now, and then you just call me back when you're done eating. You
Hmm.
know, so yeah, you start to open up, and of course, then there's Facebook, and you start posting things. But yeah, my close friends, I will tell you, work has been very difficult.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
Yeah, in your line
very
of work,
difficult.
um, yeah, I've heard some nurses go into that because it's sometimes a lot quieter because there's just them and the person they're treating. But yeah, I'd love to hear your experience.
Well, I worked in the operating room for 30 years, so
Oh,
things are
okay.
not quiet in the operating
Yeah,
room.
no, that's different.
I've only been in the office for 2 years, but people are not kind, and I shouldn't say that. Some people are not kind, but Gum seems to be a big thing in the OR, which I don't understand why, because typically you really shouldn't be chewing gum in the operating room, but people do. And if you ask them to not, it's like you're asking them to cut off their arm. And I don't understand it. It's like it's only for an hour or two when you're in the room with me, when we're working together. Can you just not pop your gum? I mean, how hard is it? I don't understand why people get so upset when you ask them as nicely as you can. Listen, I've got this thing. Can you please just not, no matter what way you say it, it is not 99% of the time not received well.
Yeah, and we're considered the crazy ones.
We're considered the crazy ones. And so then you become the gum Nazi in the operating room. That's
Hmm.
what you're called. And then when you find out that there is, yay, a system-wide policy that you are not supposed to chew gum around patients or during patient care or while you're on the phone, you dig up the policy, you find it, it's actually there, it's in writing, it's policy. So then you bring it to your boss and say, look, can we, try to enforce this? Well,
Enforce,
how are
yeah.
we supposed to enforce people to not chew gum? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, the same way you enforce people to come and punch a time clock and come to work, you ask them to do it. I mean, this is what I would get for my bosses. Well, how do you want us to
Oh my
enforce this?
God.
And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, you're the boss. Figure it out, you know? So then, um, if things are very loosely enforced, there was one guy I worked with, and he was an aide, and everybody loved him, and everyone thought he was this wonderful man, and he was absolutely a nightmare. So if he wasn't chewing gum, because it was, like I said, very loosely enforced, he would come in the room and he would go and he would make mouth noises when he was.
Mm,
This is a grown man who goes to church and claims to be a Christian, and I'm thinking, what is so broken in your life that you have to do this to people? Like, what is wrong with you?
yeah.
It's just you ask someone to stop with the gum and they do it more. They pop more and they laugh and they think it's funny. And I'm thinking, we're not five anymore. Like, what are you doing? But
So
everybody does it. It's to be the human
yeah,
reaction.
yeah. So you were being laughed at by by adults in the
Oh,
OR?
yes. Laughed
Yeah.
at, talked about,
Mm,
stuff done purposely, noises made purposely. There were some people that were kind, it wasn't everyone, but it just made it, as usual, misery. I mean, it's just, and I'm thinking, why do I have to be subjected to this? Like, why can't we get disability? I mean, we have a situation where it makes it virtually impossible to be out in the world and not feel like you want to kill yourself. I mean, surely that qualifies you for disability, but yet here we are, we're all struggling to work in the workforce that isn't set up for people like us.
yeah. I mean, this should be I mean, it is. I mean, the ADA is, I think, wide enough to include misophonia. So it's just, I think, they're not hasn't been taken advantage enough. There hasn't been enough precedence. But it should absolutely be covered, I think, under ADA.
It is covered under the ADA. And so right now, being in this office setting that I'm at, thank God my one coworker is absolutely wonderful and she does everything she can. And again, you don't want anyone to feel like they have to walk on eggshells around you. But they like to play music in this office, and it, you know, my triggers, and I don't know why. Music didn't used to be a trigger, but it is now.
Mm,
And I just had an issue with a different coworker, not my normal one, with one that is PRN, that she comes and goes. And she likes to sit at her desk and eat and crinkle things and chew gum and suck on candy right next to me.
Yeah,
And
no.
um, and because of COVID, her desk was literally right next to me, like she was a foot away from me. And because of COVID, we're supposed to be 3 to 6 feet apart, and we have the room in the office that I work in. And so after a couple of weeks of her just plunking herself down next to me, and I'm thinking to myself, why is she not sitting over in the other area? Like, why do I have to say it? This isn't going to go well. I already know it's not going to go well. And sure enough, when I asked her if she could please, sit elsewhere, not right next to me because of COVID, she blew up and blew up to our boss, and said that I was making her move because of noises, which really was not the case in this actual scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So, of
Mm-hmm.
course, now my boss is like, well, you're going to have to go to the doctor and you're going to have to get a letter stating that you've got this condition.
Oh my
And,
God.
I don't know what allowances you think that we'll be able to make for you. And just, it was not a therapeutic discussion with my boss. She tried to pretend it was. She started off by saying, well, I just want to try and understand exactly what's going on because Jen said this and said that, and you asked her to move, and I just really need to know what's going on. And then it just turned into a half an hour of what's wrong with me. Well, people are complaining about you, and I don't understand the thing with the music, and people are you say you people say you talk about it, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what is going on? Like, what is
All you had to,
happening?
yeah, I mean, it could have been a very simple like solution. 5 seconds, just move the move the coworker and keep
Exactly. And
things. Oh
and
my
I had
God.
to tell my
And,
boss, I had to tell her 4 times. It had nothing to do with the noise issue with her. It has to do with I don't want her sitting a foot away from me. And we're not supposed to be sitting a foot away from each other. 4 times I had to tell my boss because she kept saying, well, I think it's the noise. I'm like, it is not the noise issue. Like, why do I have to repeat myself? I don't understand. It's because of COVID. And why am I the one that has to tell her to move? Why aren't you telling her to move? You see where she sits.
this is a
Why don't
healthcare and
This is
office,
healthcare?
right? Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Okay.
It's absolutely ludicrous. It's ridiculous. So now I have an appointment with a neurologist so that I can go and get it actually documented. I did go for a hearing to an
Hmm.
audiologist about 20 years ago, and she's like, "Yep, yep, you got it." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So now I'm going to try a neurologist so I can actually have it, documented, printed out on a piece of paper so I can take it to work. And I told my boss, I sent her there was a podcast with I can't think of her name, the audiologist out in Oregon.
Oh, Marsha Johnson. Yeah.
Yes, there was a great podcast that she had done explaining it and explaining how we're covered under the ADA. And I sent it to my boss. It was an hour long. I said, here, if you would like to listen to this, I said, this pretty much explains everything. I said, what I have is a disability. And, but again, the thing with asking her to move wasn't, it actually wasn't a noise issue. And I said, and the reason I talk about it, I was telling my boss, is because I thought, well, if I'm open and honest, then people will know, and
And
then no
act like
one will be,
adults.
and act like adults, and nobody will be walking on eggshells. They just know, well, Leanne's having a moment. Let's give her, she's got to calm down. Whatever the situation is, I'm
Yeah.
trying to deal with it on my own. If I explain to people, then they won't sit there and wonder what the hell's wrong with me.
Yeah.
They'll know. Oh,
Not rocket science. Yeah.
right, right. But apparently that didn't work either. Like, if you don't talk about it, it's an issue. If you do talk about it, it's an issue. So then again, you try to become invisible.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know what to say. It's almost it's like a sick comedy. your
right?
situation is it's almost like yeah, it just everyone gets every situation seems more comical and worse than the last.
Yes.
I mean I'm listening to that, just kind of admiring your ability to just advocate for yourself. Still, I mean, in the face of absolute non logic and absurdity. That's yeah, no, that's interesting. But yeah, you're right. I mean, makes sense that your reaction after that would just be to go invisible again. What are you going to do? I mean, you want to risk your livelihood, your immediate livelihood at least. I'm sure you can get another job somewhere else later if you had to, but not that I'm advocating that, but yeah, that's an interesting situation. Have you? I mean, anybody at your? I mean, these are people who I'm sure. I mean, some of them are dealing with mental health issues. I mean, this is like, you know, uh, the world in 2021. These are
Right.
people who probably are not, they're not unaware of mental health issues, or are they just completely oblivious? Is it? Um, I
I,
mean,
I,
we're the ugly duckling of mental health conditions, anyways. I'm just curious. Are
right.
these people who tend to be kind of like oblivious to mental health stuff in general, the people you're working with, and
I,
or
I don't know. I was so taken aback, first of all,
yeah,
by my coworker who did that, and then by my boss with how she approached it and handled it. I, I just,
it's crazy that you've had multiple situations of coworker and boss duo just being
well, the
bad
coworker,
cop, bad cop.
the reason with the boss, the conversation with the boss, it happened the same day as I asked the coworker to move, and she went right on her computer and started complaining to my boss about me. So then my boss is like, "Well, we need to talk," and I'm like, "Okay." So then that whole conversation started where she pretended it was therapeutic, and then it became just
Right. Yeah.
everything I was doing wrong. So this is the thing that kills me is because of COVID and everything, and our the company I work for has been really trying hard with the whole mental health advocacy and um sending out
Yeah.
emails about mindfulness and meditation, and let's on Wednesday let's meet for chair yoga, whatever it is that they're trying to do. So the whole thing was just so shocking to me that um, my coworker got so darn upset that I asked her to sit elsewhere because of the pandemic, and then turned around and threw me under the bus to my boss, and then of course how my boss reacted. Um,
Many things here are not making sense.
right. So I don't know. My boss knows that I've been trying different things. I did lose my mother almost 4 years ago, and I was in a bad relationship also. So I'm also dealing with some PTSD and some
Hmm,
other
hmm, hmm,
mental health things. I've had, depression many,
hmm.
many years. And so I even took FMLA. I just not complete time off of work, just appointments that I had to go to. And my boss knows it that I've been trying to deal with the PTSD, um, so that I can become healthier and be a better person and a better nurse. And then for her to do this to me, I just could not even. I couldn't. I don't have any word for it. Like I, flabbergasted. Just
I'm yeah. I think everyone listening is also similarly confused. Does your boss have any other sounds harsh, but any other redeeming qualities? Like, were they, sympathetic to some of these other things you were dealing with at least?
yes. When I handed in the FML paperwork, FMLA, I didn't go
FML,
into.
not me. It's not fuck my life. It's something
No,
else.
it's Family
Okay.
Medical Leave Act. Yeah,
Okay.
FMLA. I think I was slurring it. Um, I told her I didn't tell her a lot, but I said, between my mother and the toxic relationship that I'm extracting myself from, I'm dealing with PTSD and panic attacks, which I've never had, and extreme anxiety and stuff, and I need to go to these appointments so I can try to heal. I was doing some different things. I even tried ketamine. Um,
Mm,
so she knew, and at that point she seemed, you know, okay, well, I'm here to support you and whatever you need, and just let me know what days you need off or what hours you need off, and we'll do our best. But all this meanwhile is also happening in the middle of a pandemic when, you know, resources are stretched and there's not enough workers and there's not enough people to cover shifts and she's got to cover shifts. She's got a lot of stress. She had COVID and my boss is dealing with terrible after effects of COVID. She's got her own
mm.
crap going on. But again, I almost wish I had recorded the conversation because it was so vile. It was just,
Unnecessarily. I mean, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah, everyone has crap going on, but it just seems like you should pick your battles, and some solutions are quite simple and would make other people's quality of life, your quality of life in this case, so much better. It's just um, yeah, just a bizarre sequence of events.
yeah,
It's a bizarre
truly.
direction that your boss decided to take. Do you think that has something to just something about misophonia, where at its kind of point in its in its lifetime of awareness, that people are just it's an easy target to kind of like go after?
I think it's an easy target because
It's just so
it
it
sounds
sounds
so
just
ridiculous.
ridiculous. Yeah,
You mean
yeah.
if we play music, Leanne, you want to go hang yourself in the corner? Yeah, actually, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what happens. That is exactly how I feel. I know it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. I sit there and I'm literally hanging on by my fingernails when the music is playing, and I'm trying to take care of patients and be compassionate and kind and do all the things that I have to do. Meanwhile, I can't even concentrate. I can't even think. I can't, the words don't make
Yeah.
sense. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, am I even safe? Like, to take care of people? Thank
Mm-hmm.
God I'm not, having to do medication calculations and things of that nature. Thank God it's an office job, but still, I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I can't comprehend things because there's got to be music playing in the background. There doesn't have to be music playing in the background. There's no reason for it. And if it
Right.
and if it's causing one of your coworkers to literally want to stab herself in the is it worth it? Seriously?
Yeah,
Like
in the age of you could they can put on their own earbuds, headphones. I mean, if you want to listen to
exactly.
music.
Right. Anything. And it's not for the patients because the patients are waiting in the waiting room. They're not sitting at the desk with me. You know what I mean? So you can't sit
Yeah.
there and say, well, the patients like the music. Well, they're not out here with me. They're in their waiting rooms where guess what? There's a TV going. So it just anyway. So then let's see. There was something else happened that I wanted to tell you at work, and I can't remember. It's gone out of my head
I'm
now. But
almost afraid of you. I'm almost
ah,
afraid of what I'm going to hear.
oh gosh, it's just something. There was something that happened, but I can't remember. Oh, so when my coworker, the one who's very kind to me and understanding, she was gone for the day. So a different woman from a different clinic came to help. And so my normal coworker's typing on the keyboard is the trick. Turned out to be
Yep.
a trigger. God bless her. It's not her fault, right? She's got to type. So again, I sit there. I put the earbuds in, which my boss told me I'm not allowed to because that's
Oh
against
God.
policy. It's against policy. But not that it interferes with anything, because the minute a patient walks by or the phone rings, obviously I'm right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so a different coworker came from a different clinic and she's typing. She's like, and she said this independently, all on her own. She says, geez, Leanne, your keyboards are so noisy here. And I'm like, I know. I said, I know they are. She goes, well, we have keyboards in where I work and they're not this noisy. I think you can order keyboards that are quieter. And I'm like, oh my God, that would be fantastic. That would be awesome. I've got this issue with the noise. And so I explained to her. So when my boss was busy telling me everything that was wrong with me that time we had the conversation. She brought that up that, well, even that nurse, Leanne, was complaining about you. And I'm thinking to myself, she
Hmm?
wasn't complaining about you. There was nothing to complain about. We just had a conversation. And my boss was like, well, you talk about it way more than you think you do. And I'm like, what are you talking
What is
about?
happening? Are you in North
Seriously.
Carolina, Earth? Where is this? Where is this place that you work? This is crazy.
It's in
Okay.
the deep south, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know, but that's what she's trying to tell me, that even this woman who's the sweetest, kindest woman, and we had a wonderful day. She
Yeah.
lost her sister a few months ago, so we were talking about
Oh
grief.
no.
We were talking, she brought up the keyboard, so I chimed in. I didn't bring it up. And so then my boss is going to tell me that she's complaining about me, and I'm like, no, I can guarantee you that she might have told you that we talked about it, but I don't think that she ran to you and said, hey, Leanne was talking about her
Yeah. It's the
misophonia.
keyboard Nazi over there I was talking
Right.
to. Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so I did go ahead and order different keyboards, and they are they are helpful, so that helps tamp down the work triggers. So that, thank God, there was a
So
little bit of a
you ordered them for everybody
resolution.
else? And
I ordered one to see if it would help, and it
yeah.
did. So
Yeah.
I went
Cool.
ahead and ordered three more, and I'm waiting for them to come in. Yeah. So
Um
thank God.
yeah. And what was I gonna ask? Yeah, it'll come to me.
Hmm.
I'm almost sick of talking about your boss now. No offense. I'm just
No, it's okay.
it's
Unbelievable.
almost too much. Yeah, it's almost too much. But I'm glad. I mean, look, you're I mean, you're doing stuff. You're buying keyboards. You're I mean, it's great that you kind of bonded with that other
Hmm.
nurse and that you have some nice people at work.
Yeah.
There always is somebody there who'll understand wherever you
Yeah.
are. It's a good message. Um, maybe moving on to, I don't know how much I want to get into this, but like your this toxic relationship, anything to do with misophonia, you can just pass over it if you want to.
Um,
Um,
no, truthfully, well,
yeah.
unfortunately, I don't know how to explain it. He's still he would occasionally make mouth noises thinking it's
Hmm.
funny, and it's not, but that was, trust me, the least of the
At least, okay.
toxicity.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yes, I don't understand that behavior either. I told him about that I had this thing. He researched it extensively, and
Hmm.
yet sometimes we'd be sitting there and he would make fake mouth chewing noises or clicking noises, or and then laugh and giggle, and I'm thinking,
Oh,
why
Jesus.
would anyone think this is funny? Like what possesses humans to do this to other humans and to treat other people like this? It, it's mind-boggling to me.
Hmm.
When you say to someone, hey, it's not you, it's me. Can I ask you a favor, please? Can you please, when you're chewing your gum, can you please just chew it quietly? And then they go ahead and pop and snap their gum. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, well, it happens 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it with the human makeup that this is the initial that's the initial reaction to do? And then they laugh. Like, is it nerves? Is it they don't know what to do? Is it they're uncomfortable? Is it that they're going to show you that they want to do whatever it is they want to do and you can't tell them when all you're doing is asking? What is that human component? Does anybody know?
And as you were saying that, I'm just thinking, there's a lot of things that we, kids do that gets goes away with maturity, and I feel like this is just some behavior that we're not used to getting over. It's just some childish
Yes.
thing that just kind of like stays, and no one's ever told anybody that it's not in any Dear Abby or any book to
Right.
actually take this seriously. Where everything else, I think there's a corollary from between kids and adult, and people just kind of have gotten around to like manners and all that stuff, right? There's
Mhm.
nothing for this. And so I think nobody grows up from all that stupid behavior, childish
Yeah.
behavior.
It's looking at it from a I don't even know what perspective. From a observation perspective, it's a very interesting phenomena, I think, that your initial reaction is to do exactly what you're being asked to not do.
To your loved one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or your friend or your
Yeah. Or
coworker
anybody. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or
Right. Right.
anybody. I mean,
Right.
to another human being. It's a very interesting thing that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
happens a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exhausting. Um,
Yeah.
and then did you, so yeah, it sounds like you've seen therapists and various doctors. Is there anybody, have you
Hmm.
gone to anybody specifically for this?
Not specifically. And so the neurologist that I have an appointment with in a week is actually sleep because since everything happened the past 4 years, I'm having and menopause sleep issues, but I'm
Mm,
going to talk to them about it also. And if they don't know anything about it or are not, if they're strictly just sleep neurologists, then I'm going to ask them if he knows anyone in the area that
mm,
does deal with misophonia. I know there's a person in Atlanta, which if there's nobody around here in the Charlotte area, then I'm gonna have to go to Atlanta because I am gonna get that note. I'm gonna start that
yeah,
whole process because I I don't think that it is reasonable that we have to somehow learn how to function in a society that does not tolerate us. We're expected to tolerate everything. And to tell you the truth, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. It's a daily, exhausting effort to go to work and act and appear normal when you're being triggered all day long. And
yeah.
I'm
Oh,
tired. I'm
and that's
tired.
just one layer. I mean, the everything your reactions, that the reactions that you've described is just, yeah,
Yeah,
is
I'm tired.
that's just on top of all that. Yeah. Well, I wish you luck in your. I would love to hear about. This episode will probably go live after you hear back from the neurologist and all this stuff happens. I don't know. I know you have tons of stuff going on, but I'd be curious to kind of like keep in touch on how that goes. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
hope it
will
goes well.
definitely, yeah, thanks. I'll definitely let you know. I'll let you know if there's anyone in this area. Like I said,
Yeah,
from what the research I've done, I think there's someone in Asheville too, maybe, and Asheville's not all that far away either. So if this doctor I'm going to see can't help me, won't help me, doesn't know how to help me, or isn't, you know, involved at all with misophonia, then I am going to pursue the next doctor because, like I said, I am going to
got to do it. Got to do what you
whatever,
got to do.
got to do what I got to do. Yeah. So, but
What's
I will,
your
I'll let you know.
and how does your what does your daughter think?
She does her very best, and she knows, I mean, we talk about it all the
Yeah, yeah,
time. She knows it's a brain disorder and that it's not something that I can control and that I do my best to control it. But, she's seen me at my worst when there's dogs barking
mm,
and balls bouncing and she's seen me at my absolute worst. And I have to sit in my room and be a prisoner in my own house and the insanity of it all. And then you try to explain it to try to make it make sense, and it doesn't
mm,
make sense. And you know, you just hope that they understand, and I think she does. She
mm.
understands. Yeah.
But she's not like laughing and making
No,
louder sounds
no,
or anything. So
no,
that's
no, she doesn't do any of that. She she loves to chew and eat her ice, but she knows not to do that around me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not telling anybody to never do these things, but
Right.
just be a
Yeah.
little bit more aware when, yeah, when it causes so much grief. Um,
And to not take it personal, that if she does,
yeah,
God forbid, put ice in her mouth around me, hey, can you not do that, honey? Oh, okay. You know, not take it personally. It's not a personal attack on the person.
that was the other thing that actually that makes me think, beyond like childishness escaping into adulthood. It seems like a lot of childishness gets replaced by defensiveness. Adults just get
Yes.
very, very defensive. And
Yes.
so I'm wondering if that's actually what was the issue with with your coworkers. It's just like some people are just automatic defensive on everything,
Yeah.
and then it comes out in weird ways. So
Yes.
um, again, not pleasant to deal with, but
Yes.
it's it's the one way. It's the adult childishness. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but you know what I
Well,
mean.
I do know what you mean, and we all, we have to allow everyone grace. If we're expected
Hmm.
to receive
Hmm.
grace, then obviously we have to give grace. And I don't think any misophonia sufferer um, doesn't have that capacity because all we want is compassion. And so I think we give compassion in spades because we know how awful it is when we don't
Hmm.
receive it. So, of course, we give people grace, but when there's, blatant attacks and I'm not talking about the one time, the very first time you ask someone to do something and they're like, "Oh yeah, chomp chomp, pop pop, snap," but then they don't ever do it again. So then you have to calm yourself down and say, okay,
Hmm.
it just seems to be the thing that happens, but
Hmm.
thankfully they don't do it anymore. And you give that person grace and you move
Hmm.
on. It's just the constant of people, blatantly being mean and cruel and hurtful, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's a
that doesn't
hard
make
fit.
sense on many levels.
Yeah, but
Even without misophonia, as we've talked about. Um, yeah, interesting. Yeah, maybe some of your other coping mechanisms. I guess real quick. I guess we should probably start to maybe wind down. Or see,
mm-hmm,
it's already like an hour almost.
mm-hmm,
It kind of flies by. Yeah, this is some of you got earbuds. You said you buying keyboards. I mean, I guess we've kind of went over a bunch of
mm-hmm.
but the way you've talked about it in the face of total absurdity is another lesson for people, I think, or at least gives them kind of some context as to what's the worst case scenario. I mean, not to make light of your situation, but it's just like it's good to know like what's the worst that can happen, and usually it's better. But it's good to prepare, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
are you like do you avoid certain friends or certain types of people or certain parts of going out grocery stores and things like that? I'm just curious if you have like random like little things that you do.
I avoid most situations, truthfully. It's just easier to
Hmm.
stay in my house because then I don't have to
Hmm.
explain myself and I don't have to be triggered. And, I do stuff with family, but even just today, I had to get the oil change and it's just the boom, boom, boom with the bass.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, and again, you talk yourself off the edge, but it's just easier just to be here where
Hmm.
98% of the time it's quiet as can be. Occasionally there's a dog barking randomly, but it's just peaceful. And I'm going to be flying in January and I'm already dreading it because you know what everyone does when they get on a plane, they throw the gum in the mouth.
Hmm.
Um, so I've got my noise canceling earphones that I'll be taking and but it's already
There is that.
dreading a trip,
Yeah.
this wonderful trip that I'm going on, and there's dread, you know?
Yeah. No, that's yeah. It's well. Yeah, that's. I mean, there's at least some cabin. I try to think of the positive. Is that when I'm traveling, there's background noise from the cabin.
Yes,
But
thank
yeah,
God.
there's.
Yes,
Can you imagine flying into complete silence and everybody smacking and the way everyone's so packed together like sardines on a plane?
right.
It's almost like a disaster.
And you know how it
Um,
works. The only person popping and snapping
yeah,
the gum is going to be the one sitting right behind you. I mean, that's just that's just how it goes.
it's just this miso law right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, yeah, Leon's been interesting. Yeah, I'd love to keep in touch. But yeah, anything else you wanna tell people as we kind of wrap up here?
I just would love to know if anyone has successfully gotten disability for misophonia. Is there anybody out there yet that has successfully gone through the whole process? And when and where are we building the community is what I want to know too.
Yeah, good questions. I should probably get a list. Maybe I'll put it in the Misophonia podcast app, like a list of maybe people who have done things like that successfully,
Hmm.
gotten disability, and then people can contact each other. Because you can go into speaking of community, you can go on the Reddits and the Facebooks, but it's just a giant free for all
Right.
um, of ranting, so it's maybe not the best place.
No, I'm talking about where we can live in peace and
Yeah. Oh,
quiet.
yeah. 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 Yes.
That
Misoville.
community.
Right.
Misoville, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. We might need quite a right. We'll need a lot of land, but we should. Yeah, we should think about that, or at least kind of have maybe a blueprint for like if we get some land in various places, like what are some
Right.
ways to kind of I don't know, avoid I don't know, live off the grid a little bit.
Yeah.
In
Oh, there's acreage out there. We just have to
Mm-hmm.
buy 1,000 acres, pull our money, buy some
Yep.
land, and we can all live, quarter mile apart, half a mile
Yeah.
apart.
No, I'm
And it
trying to do
doesn't
that
even
up in
matter
Minnesota. Yeah.
because we all we're not going to be the ones with the bass booming and the balls bouncing and the dogs barking,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Um, so it does need to happen. There needs to be a safe place for us. You buying the 6.5 acres on my own was hard. I don't make a lot of money. Um, so there does need to be a place for us. If they can have 55 and older and all other kinds of, weird nude colonies and all these kinds of things, surely we can come together, right?
Right. Nude colonies made me think of, I forgot to ask you about visual triggers, but
Oh
well, I'm
God,
assuming you got those as well.
oh yeah, I got them too. Yep.
Um, I'm wondering, uh, apart from like space, I'm wondering if like maybe we could talk to an architect's kind of uh, maybe some design notes for misophones would be just materials. Like maybe if we had like a super heavy concrete tall building, we can kind of like build cheaper when we don't need as much space, and we can be very isolated in terms of sound between each floor and
Yes,
between each unit.
I'm sure there's, well, I think if each place had a firewall, firewalls help.
Oh,
And I,
we should yeah, like maybe we can somehow influence building codes in some cities,
right,
and that could be the first step.
right, triple pane windows. And then I
Yeah, oh,
did
yeah.
see this building material that it didn't really look very heavy and thick, but you can actually put it on your walls and your ceiling to dampen the
Mm-hmm.
sounds. But if there were firewalls above, below, whatever, next to,
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
certainly reduces sound. Because I certainly would like to not have to take care of 6.5 acres by myself. I
Right.
would like to live in a town, a condo, but
Yeah.
we can't do it. It's not possible for us unless we build our own building.
Right. Right. Building codes are not
Right,
right. They're not written with misophones in mind. I'm
right.
getting like all new storm windows. I think in a few weeks. I'm very excited because there should be some noise improvements.
Yes.
I'll report
Oh, thank
back on the
goodness.
podcast. But we need like yeah 3 feet of concrete between each condo unit. I
Oh,
feel
God,
like
yes. Yes.
um. Anyways, if there's architects listening, maybe we can start a little a lobbying auxiliary to the architect association, whatever it is.
Right. There's some architects with misophonia.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
cool. Well, Leanne, yeah, it's been super, super interesting. We talked about a lot of stuff here, and like, I like one more time. I mean, yeah, good luck with everything that happens. Keep me posted, and yeah,
Thank you.
thanks again
Will
for
do.
coming on.
Well, thank you for having me very much. And thanks for doing what you're doing, spreading awareness.
Thank you, Leanne. I hope things worked out for you with the doctor and at work. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. The easiest way to message is hit me up on Instagram at misophoniapodcast. Support the show if you can by visiting the Patreon page at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace